call this council meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. First of all, I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on July 13th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Buds and second by Councillor Knox. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening. We have no public hearings. We'll move into committee. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not have anything to report at this juncture, but I do have several items under new business.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the City Planning Economic Development Committee as well has nothing to report here, but does have some stuff under new business.
Thank you. Community Services Committee. This evening, Councillor Knox.
Good evening. Community Services has nothing to report at this portion of the meeting.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship, Waterworks Committee has nothing at this time, more in new business.
Thank you. Transportation Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Public Safety has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. We do have a number of items of new business. First up is the Portage Rotary Island Park Disc Golf, and this is under Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Worship. The item here is to authorize using some funds for signage upgrades, and these are trust funds. So just some background, the Island Park Disc Golf Association was organized back in 2014, and it was to construct a disc golf park course. The fundraising was successful. The course was built, and surplus funds raised have been held by the city for future use. And I can say that you do hear quite a few people talking about the disc park, and it is getting used. It is now that the association wants to upgrade and add to its course signage and make some course improvements, and so they are coming to ask for some of those funds. So the current balance of that trust fund is approximately $2,121, and it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the release of up to $2,121 of the Portage Rotary Island Park Disc Golf Association's trust funds for the purpose of upgrading and adding to its course signage and any other course improvements to be made.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item of new business is the second quarter 2020 financial statements. This is also finance. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but taking a minute to load reports. Flipping screens. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we do review our. Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So we do review our quarterly reports, that being March 31st, June 30th, and September 30th, and obviously our year end, and we do get detailed financial statements on a quarterly basis to see how we're doing as it relates not only to our current year, but in comparison to budget and the previous year. And so you can see in the report that there's, through the statement of operations, there's variance exceeding plus or minus 60% use of the total annual budgets are identified. And so those things are identified and listed out there. And there's two reports for council's consideration. The second one being the actual financial statements. And if you go through that one in the statement of financial position in our general fund assets and liabilities, which is really kind of our balance sheet. But the second one is kind of what most people watch, and that is our income statement. Again, on our general fund, and we have our actual to this point in 2019, our 2020 budget, and then where we are for our end of June 2020. So at this point in time, we currently look like there's a $4.7 million surplus, but of course there's a lot more money that needs to be spent for the remainder of the year. I think one of the things that we take a look at is where we were in previous years, and we are trending ahead of budget where we were from previous June 30th, 2019. So positives. And then our utility side, again, we are sitting with a budget, and I think it's important to note, as I alluded to, was that 60% threshold. So if you're at 50% of the year at the end of June, you should, correspondingly have about 50% of your expenses. However, we are somewhat heavily loaded on the back end of any year. So in September, October, we do see quite a few more expenses go through. So we need to see these surpluses, and quite frankly, I would be expecting to see this as we move towards the end of the year and use up some of those surpluses for the duration of our operating cycle, both on our general and utility side. So positives on both sides, and we look forward to continuing this trend until the end of the year. That's just for information. Was there any questions on those reports? That concludes that report. Well, we can approve. Just load this up again. Thinking about loading. It is a recommendation of the Finance Committee, and so I so move to approve the Q2, June 30th, 2020 financial statements.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And the third item of new business is also Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, and this kind of speaks to our long affiliation with the Association of Manitoba Municipalities and our fellow municipalities, and it really is to lobby the province to aid municipalities in maintaining public services, and more specifically for rural Manitoba. So just some background, the centralization of provincial, Crown, agency, and health services is a significant challenge in the delivery of services in communities outside of Winnipeg, and it affects the quality of public services, employment, and economy of the impacted municipalities. At least 40% of Manitoba's population resides outside of Winnipeg, and many provincial, Crown agency, and health services are being removed or reallocated from municipalities and centralized in Winnipeg. Municipalities outside of Winnipeg are suffering, and local needs are not being met due to reduced access to services and eliminated or vacant employment positions. The continued centralization of services and closing of much-needed public services could be detrimental to the growth or survival of our communities and the wellness of our residents. And centralizing services into one populated center with limited or no distributed additional capacity makes essential public services less resilient to the impacts of pandemics and natural disaster events. So it is a recommendation, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie ask the Association of Manitoba Municipalities to lobby the province of Manitoba to discontinue the practice of removing and reducing provincial, Crown agency, and health services in communities outside of Winnipeg, and work with municipalities to find cost-effective ways of maintaining service delivery and employment in local communities.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd just like to say that the Regional Library would certainly support this motion and also support the freezing of funds for a number of years. The libraries in Manitoba have received no increases from the province for quite some time.
Other questions, comments on the motion? So this item was discussed last week at the City Caucus meeting, and this motion is going to be sponsored by the City of Selkirk, the City of Dauphin, and the Mayor of Dauphin outlined, as most of you know, the provincial jail was shut down this past spring, and the impact on that community has been horrendous in terms of real estate values dropping, the impact on businesses, the impact on schools and on families. And Portage is certainly not immune from this type of thing. I'm sure you've heard me talk about MDC, our third largest employer here in Portage la Prairie, and the impact it has not only on the economy within the city of Portage, but in fact the entire region. So this is something that's very concerning, I think, to every city and probably every municipality across the province. So by passing this tonight, certainly it adds strength to the argument that AMM is going to make. Any final questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the June 2020 building reports, and this is city planning and act development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd like to bring Council's attention to the two reports that are there. Of course, there's the building report just for the City of Portage, I'd like to bring your attention to the combined report. We do know the relationship that we have with the RM, and we would like to look at it from a regional perspective. So when you look at the actual planning permits per date, I certainly want to congratulate the planning district. First of all, 120 million last year. We knew we would not get up there this year, but we are actually trending quite well. We're actually over $76 million in permits this year. And the only thing I wanted to bring council's attention to is that you're going to find the largest increase is some of the new multi-family residential, where you've got the largest impact, not maybe so much in the actual permits, but the dollar value of the permits. And you're also going to start to see that there's some repair going on as well. So it's really exciting to see, and I know it's a lot of work that the planning district has put into, but regionally it looks really, really good. Unless there's any questions, that would be the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Next item of new business, subdivision for Paramount Investment Corporation, and this is city planning and economic development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, before you, you will see a report from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, which is a proposal to subdivide. So the issue is consideration of the application to amend the boundaries between titles to allow for the addition of an existing building on proposed Lot 1, as well as the additional new strip mall on proposed Lot 2, described as part of River Lot 66. Parish of Portage la Prairie being Lots 1, 2, 3, Block 1, SS Plan number 1997. You'll see that there's two sketches, or one sketch and one actual a picture of the actual area. And really what that means is that the intent is just to adjust the property lines between the Hub International Strip Mall and Greenberg Law Offices. The commercial development is serviced with municipal services, piped water, and has existing access from Saskatchewan Avenue East, 3rd Street Southeast, and also Howe Avenue as well. So the development plan for the downtown corridor, it can be considered under that, which they call Policy 13.1. So I won't read all of the things about the downtown corridor use, but it can be considered under that. Right now it is zoned C2, or Central Commercial Zone. And of course, the area that they have to have for both lots is specifically specified in there. And of course, both lots would actually meet that site area and the site width requirement. So some of the comments from some of the utilities, there's no easements are required. There's no concerns from some of them. The only one we want to point out is that the Portage la Prairie Planning District does recommend that the approval is subject to a proper conforming construction agreement between the owner, the City of Portage la Prairie, and the Portage la Prairie Planning District. Community and Regional Planning recommends approval of the subdivision. So with that said, and it's the recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the subdivision of a portion of River Lot 66, Parish of Portage la Prairie being Lots 1, 2, and 3, Block SS, Plan number 1997, to amend the boundaries subject to a proper conforming construction agreement between the owner, the City of Portage la Prairie, and the Portage la Prairie Planning District.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Next item of new business is the WPCF upgrading status report, and this is Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Most of this is recapping all the work that's been done up until this date, hiring of advisors for communications, fairness, legal, and so on. And now continuing to compile background information for the prospective proponents to the project RFQ and RFP. And there will be some sampling and testing to be done, further discussion of technical aspects of the scope of treatment components of the final contract. This will form part of the scope for the request for proposals. So further discussion on the issues of higher relative risk for prospective proponents, such as existing infrastructure condition, staff transfer, and potential mitigation measures. Discuss city staff transfers in greater detail with the city's human resource lawyer. So things are moving ahead, and there will be possibly a video put together instead of a site tour for the potential bidders. And Other than that, I think most of you have probably read this. If there are no questions on that, there is the get back to the right page here. Yes, the award of the tender for the 2020 water main and wastewater sewer renewal contract. The award, the alternatives, of course, are to not award the tender or to award the tender. There were 3 proponents. Toll Construction at $763,026.66, scoring 100 points. EF Moon at 88.8 points, and Accurate HD Limited at 47.1 points. Tender was advertised in the Daily Graphic, on the city's webpage, on Merck's, with the Construction Association of Rural Manitoba, and with the Winnipeg Construction Association. Local contractors were contacted. 3 tenders were received for the opening on Tuesday, July 28, 2020. Sustainability factors and pricing were evaluated and are listed above. The pre-tender estimate for this work was $711,605, and the low bid net of GST is $724,875.33. The contract consists of 254 meters of 150 millimeter PVC water main on Lorne Avenue, 115 meters of 150 PVC water main on Campbell Place, 95 meters of PVC wastewater sewer on Bridge Road, Poplar Bluff wastewater force main interconnection and restoration work. This project will be funded from the 2020 wastewater sewer renewal budget of $285,000, the 2020 water main renewal budget of $485,000, for a total of $770,000. The Poplar Bluff force main interconnection will be partially funded from the water pollution control plant upgrade, and any remaining budget will be used for televised pipe condition assessment to prioritize wastewater sewer renewals. The contractor has indicated the work will begin in September, having the force main and wastewater sewer work complete by December 31st, 2020, with the water main renewals and finally asphalt repair. I believe this is in error. It says 2020. It should be 2021. So the recommendation is, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the 2020 water main and wastewater sewer renewal contract as specified in tender 20 OPS 026 to Toll Construction Limited for the tendered price of $763,026.66, including taxes.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the award of consulting services for the pre-design of Saskatchewan Avenue West upgrading. And this is Transportation Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you said, the issue is to award the contract for pre-design of the upgrading of Saskatchewan Avenue West. The City of Portage la Prairie issued a request for proposals for consulting services for a pre-design of Saskatchewan Avenue West upgrades. The scope of work includes updating the conceptual design work done in 2006, completing a drainage plan, and providing Class C cost estimates. The redeveloped roadway would include at least a 4-lane divided road, median turning lanes, right turning lanes, asphalt surface, concrete curb and gutter, boulevards, improved drainage, aesthetic/architectural, surface improvements, defined parking, sidewalks, and improved pedestrian and cyclist access and safety. The request for a proposal closed on August the 4th, 2020. 4 proposed packages were sent out, and 1 proposal was received from WSP Canada Group Limited. The proposal was evaluated according to policy ENG-F, with scoring as follows: WSP Canada Group Limited, $184,931, and a possible 92 out of a possible 100 points. WSP received a very good score on the non-financial factors, and their price was $184,931, including $5,386 in disbursements. The proposal from WSP demonstrated a very good understanding of the project with excellent detail on how project outcomes would be met. The proposed staff are highly qualified to do the work. The proposal includes several meetings with city staff and presentation of the design report at the November 9th, 2020 City Council meeting. A total of $500,000 has been budgeted for the work on Saskatchewan Avenue West upgrading project for 2020. This would leave approximately $315,000 towards detailed design work planned for later in 2020. It is the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for pre-design of Saskatchewan Avenue West upgrading to WSP Canada Group Limited for the upset limit price of $184,931 plus taxes.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business, second quarter reports, and this is for information. And first up is City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on our logistics and trying to maintain the social distancing suggestions, I'm going to actually kind of just cover the report on behalf of our Executive Director, Ms. O'Leary, but she is here and available if there's any questions. So in the essence of time, I will not certainly go through the whole report, but I do want to point out to Council some of the exciting things that have actually been going on in the Regional Economic Development Department over the last 3 months. We know that our Economic Development Officer has been here roughly only 6 months, so she's relatively still new into her term, but I do want to commend her for some of the work and some of the programs and some of the committees and stuff that she's been able to put together and some of the results that have already happened from it. So you'll see the report in front of you. And the only thing I just want to kind of stress, and I just want to get it out there because we never do maybe talk about it enough, because there's obviously a lot of other things to talk about, but exactly what is PRED? And I just want to kind of just really briefly mention what the, how the best way to describe it. So the Portage Regional Economic Development, known as PRED, advises and makes recommendations and actions matters pertaining to economic development, which includes but are not limited to economic development initiatives, incentives, current business climate, business attraction and retention, community economic development, business retention and expansion, marketing opportunities, and other issues that may promote economic development. PRED assists with providing input and expertise on ways to encourage and help businesses and individuals to invest, retain, and expand in the region of the Portage la Prairie, support businesses to create jobs, diversity, and increase the tax base, which ultimately leads to a better quality of life for all who work, reside, and visit the region. So I just think it's important to understand what PRED's role is. And of course, it's made up of 3 RM councillors, 3 city councillors, and of course, we have 1 community at large. Some of the real quick highlights, we released the strategic plan back in July. I know that Ms. O'Leary had presented that both to the RM board and to the city board as well, which really covers 4 different areas. Covers governance, regional economic development, communications, and financial management and responsibility. We've already done a number of those, and just some of the real brief updates is that we've developed a phase 2 of a regional business registry, development of promotional campaigns for tourism, and I'm sure a number of people have seen those in the social media campaigns that have been ongoing, continued referrals and navigation for business startups and expansion projects, creation of the Portage la Prairie and District Tourism Committee, which is a fantastic group of dedicated, community-minded individuals in our region that have been dedicating time to, of course, increase tourism within our own area and our own region. And of course, the development of the Portage la Prairie Economic Response Team to help combat COVID-19. And that committee has also been meeting on a regular basis in order to provide supports and information for business owners that have been affected as a result of this COVID-19. That's really all I want to kind of cover. As you go through the rest of the report, it'll just kind of detail some of the other things. And the last thing I just want to point out, though, is that through the COVID-19 PLP Economic Response Team, we did, they did, a Road to Recovery campaign, and if you're familiar with it, it's called I Took the Pledge. And I trust that everybody in and around the table, anybody that's in Portage, the region and so on, has taken the pledge. And I really encourage you to go to the PRED website to really find out what that is. So that said, take the pledge. Thank you, Your Worship. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. The next quarterly reports are from Community Service Committee. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have second quarter reports tonight from the Heritage Committee, the Public Art Committee, PCRC, our Youth Council, and Parks Committee. We are going to have some information from a few of these, and I would just first like to invite through you Victoria Espy from PCRC up to give her report. We've determined she can do it safely from the podium for 10 minutes or less, according to Dr. Rusin. So there you go.
I don't think I need 2 minutes.
I'll just ask all the speakers that are going to use the podium tonight, if after you're finished, if you could take those really good Lysol wipes and just wipe down the
Right here.
area, they're out in front, but afterwards.
Bright yellow container.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I can do that. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I will give a brief overview of the second quarter report from PCRC. It's getting quite lengthy. I did a head count today, and PCRC is now employing 19 people, so it's pretty incredible the growth that we've seen over the last few years. Starting at the top, though, our community facilitator is really busy with the small grants program. She's opened that call for proposals up, and our focus will be on programs that have an impact on our community around COVID-19. So we've received several applications for that program, and I believe some dollars went out, and our second call for proposals will be out in October. The local immigration partnership program has been really busy. They switched kind of gears to a road to recovery as well, and with a major focus on anti-racism campaigns, specifically around combating an anti-Asian sentiment around COVID-19. So there's lots of posters and literature around that around town. We didn't host a traditional beautification days this year, but we did hand out cleaning supplies to groups and families and individuals who did do cleanups around the city. As well, we have our green team out doing litter pickup and graffiti removal. Some highlights throughout the past few months, the Reaching Home program. Pauline Johnson, our Reaching Home coordinator, worked really hard in addressing homelessness in our community. She connected with 11 individuals who were facing homelessness and either got them housing or shelter in a different community, but was able to assist those individuals in finding some sort of resource. She was also instrumental in securing the funding for Restabit to reopen at least until December. So I think she was successful in securing about $132,000 for them. Cornell's also been really busy with his program. The Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition was able to secure $85,000 in COVID funding, specifically to support off-reserve First Nations people in our community who are not receiving benefits from their First Nations communities. So those supports will either be food security, mental health supports, travels to services. The list is kind of endless, but we did grant out the $85,000 to many agencies in Portage who do support off-reserve First Nations people. We continue to work with other stakeholders to run the emergency soup kitchen. We'll continue that through August. You will notice throughout town there's many different planter boxes filled with food, and we've labeled that the Garden Goodies Project. We did have support from the city on that, so we're very grateful, but there is lots of different fruits and vegetables coming out of those boxes that are available for the taking from anybody. So that was another exciting project. And we continue on with just our basic programs, the community mailbox, the seed libraries there. we are supporting the Portage Rotary Club by hosting 2 Green Team students for their duck pond rejuvenation project. So we're super busy, and the next few months will be even busier with the addition of our community's Building Youth Futures project, which is a brand new 4-year project that has 3 staff attached to it to help improve graduation rates and entrance into employment for youth in our community. So super busy and really exciting times, but that's it from me.
Any questions for Victoria? Thank you.
Thank you.
A few exciting things from our Heritage Committee, just to note, is that work is going to begin on the Wallace Museum, and it's going to be superintended by Greg Roberts. Some exciting information on a book coming out, etc., which we'll hear more about in our committee meeting. But I just have to point out the fact, I don't know how many of you are on Facebook and have become a part of a public group called Portage la Prairie Memories, which was started by a local citizen, but it's really shown me how a heritage of a community or memories that is very important to people, because that is probably the most active page I've seen on Facebook in a while, and people are loving it, and they say it's a workout for their brain to try and remember what was actually here in the community. So I think it's great. We have our youth counselor in attendance, Abby. Abby, would you like to speak to your report?
Yes, thank you. So for activities completed this quarter, I contributed my budget for prizes for the Bike Week event, and as per usual, attended city council meetings and committee meetings and maintained a Facebook account. And as for activities begun this quarter, I continued my research on the Youth Advisory Council on Climate of Manitoba and continued discussions on climate issues with my peers. So I wanted to mention, before COVID-19 hit, I had plans to focus on climate issues and how the community's youth could get involved in with like climate change and like pollution, because I think it directly affects the future of the youth of today, and it's a common topic of discussion amongst my peers. So I wanted to be able to voice their concerns, but unfortunately the pandemic made it hard for me to follow through with those plans. So I'm hoping maybe the next youth counselor is as passionate about the subject as me. And I also, for another activity I began this quarter, was creating a report for council, including the questions and concerns brought up by youth at the Meet Your Counselors event that I held at PCI. And I did compile a list and would be happy to send the list out to any of the counselors that weren't present at that event. And as for my goals for next quarter, was to participate and contribute my budget for the Prairie Sunday event at Fort Larian Museum, which I did get the chance to complete in July. And since tonight is my last meeting, I also wanted to say that I'm really grateful to have been given this wonderful opportunity to represent my peers on this council, and that I've grown and learned so much from this experience. And I'm very appreciative, and I'm very appreciative of the support and kindness I have received from everyone on council, and I wanted to thank you all for your help. And I'm very motivated to be involved in my community now and make a difference just like everyone does on this council. Thank you.
I'd like to call Councillor Davidson and Councillor Knox up to the front. So let you, this is kind of awkward, but we'll have you move in there. So council would like to present you with this plaque as a token of our appreciation for all the work you've done. And I don't think you're our 5th youth council. I don't think we've ever had a more challenging year. Yeah. And I know you didn't get to do everything that you planned on doing, but you certainly did a great job. And on behalf of the council, citizens of Portage la Prairie, I want to present you with this plaque.
Thank you.
And
Do you want to all just look this way? And I'll
Stand close for a picture.
Now we should all,
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll just say that too, Abby. A lot of people in your position would have lost their engagement as soon as COVID hit and school kind of ended. So I just think you should commend yourself for keeping engaged with us, and congratulations. Okay, a couple of more reports. We have the public art report, which they are researching projects for 2021, and that's all we know. So I'm sure out in the public, they will tell us eventually when they choose those projects. And then the Parks Committee, and it's exciting time for them for sure. And I'm just going to ask if possibly, through your worship, if Councillor Espy would want to talk about it? What's happening?
Sure, I can touch on it a little bit. I believe there is a site meeting coming up where we're making some final preparations on location of the different aspects of the park, but we'll see some progress being made in the not so distant future with the interactive water feature.
Thank you. That so ends all of our informational reports.
thank you, Councillor Knox. The next quarterly reports come from Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll just touch briefly on some of these points. The water treatment plant in the second quarter had an increased draw on their resources there, with a daily average of 20,000 cubic meters of water going out as compared to 18,000 cubic meters same time last year. This is due to industrial usage. There's still a sand filter offline for repair. The distribution pumps for the industrial park failed in July, but bypasses were able to supply the industrial park from other resources. Phase 2 upgrades continue. Phase 2B, installation of the generators, is ongoing, and Phase 3, functional design, ongoing. At the Water Pollution Control Facility, an average of 11.9 million liters of wastewater per day was treated for a total of 1,085 million liters in quarter 2. There was one small exceedance of suspended solids due to required cleaning of the EQ basin. One basin was taken down for inspection and repair, and that means really shutting down a quarter of the treatment capacity there, so it's nice to get that done. Progress continues with the nutrient removal project. As I said earlier, the city has awarded contracts for all the advisors. The RFQ is currently being prepared, as well as a video for a virtual tour. In the Waterworks Division, staff have repaired 3 water main breaks, 2 force main breaks, and 10 sewer line breaks this quarter. They've also repaired 6 curb stops. The regular directional water main flushing program started May 31st and continued through July 24th. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. The next second quarterly reports for 2020 are from the Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I would like to invite Detachment Commander Inspector St. Pierre up to give a highlight of his report and answer questions that we may have.
Good evening, Your Worship and City Council. So if it pleases the Council, I'll start off with the report, which is the administrative document that was provided. We have seen some transfer of members in line with our yearly transfer plan of incoming and outgoing members. We were running 2 vacancies. One was in the school liaison position because of the COVID pandemic. The school's shutting down. We felt there was no need for that position at this time, so we reallocated it to another city position where we were short. Um, Right now on the provincial side, as you can see, that affects more of the RM and the neighboring detachments, but we're also short there. We've got some experience that have transferred in. Constable Brian has moved out of Portage, but moved into the Treehorn detachment, so it's nice to keep him locally here as an extra support person when we need the services of a rural member in Portage. He's familiar with the people. Mikkel Zier is a member that has transferred in from Lower Mainland, Vancouver, and so with that she brings a lot of general duty experience from a very, very busy place, and so her experience is welcome as well. We expect after the annual summer transfers that our vacancy rate will be full on the Portage Municipal, Amaranth and Treehorn areas, and we'll be running a couple on the Portage Rural. And we expect to have Constable John Kelo in the school liaison position effective August 17th. So we're going to start ramping that up in anticipation that school is going to be reopening. Any questions on the first part? Okay. Budgeting, as of right now, we're on track for budgeting. We had a larger capital project for the front counter of the Portage detachment, which when COVID first started, we weren't sure we were going to be able to get done, but we worked out additional safety measures between the contractors and our detachment staff to make sure that we could execute that project. I was speaking with our property management with regards to the next capital budget project, which is a retrofit and renovation of our hard interview room as recommended by our security and safety analysis unit. And COVID, of course, has delayed that progress as well, so we're going to try and get that rolling as things have started to open up, and hopefully they remain open. We'll look to get that project going because I understand council has allocated money for that. This year, in line with historically the communities, City of Portage has had as priorities the commitment for the police to contribute to community safety, enhance road safety within the city, and to communicate effectively. So that's not just with this council, but also with our community stakeholders and our partner agencies. And so we have drafted up a few initiatives and tailored them specific to the city based on this council's expression of need. So some examples of that I'll flag for you as we go through this document. Obviously, COVID did have an impact on some of the services we could provide. So when we talk about crime reduction and community relations, the first initiative we had was to continue to hold offenders accountable via condition checks, so checking on their bail conditions and their probation conditions. So in the first quarter, in spite of COVID, we still maintained our service level of conducting regular offender checks, and of that we did 140 checks and laid 52 charges on individuals. Additionally, we also executed 22 judicial authorizations. So that includes drug, criminal, and various types of warrants during that period. We completed 160 intelligence reports. And as discussed prior over the years with this council, we have really worked hard with the Crown's Office and been engaged with the Crown's Office to help manage our offenders. And that relationship is very collaborative at this date. I'm happy to report that. And so we've had 17 meetings, various discussions on how to enhance communication and systems between our offices. Stakeholder engagement, so there's various stakeholders there. We had 74 contacts with the Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition, Local Portage Local Immigration Partnership, the Wawakea Collaborative, COPP, Bear Clan, Restabit, City of Portage la Prairie, Portage Fire Department, Portage Justice Committee, Southern Health Authority, Manitoba Housing, Child and Family Services, and MPI, PCRC, and the Oakland Delta Beach Council. For school presentations, in spite of this, during this quarter, we had no school. However, the new school liaison, just to show you how eager he is and how awesome he's going to be in his new role, he engaged the school staff as well as Superintendent Cuddington, 63 times. He also facilitated and took advantage of the opportunity of the high school being vacant and organized detachment tours with each of the watches so that they could be familiar with the premise of PCI when responding to calls at that particular location. So very proactive individual. He's going to be excellent in that role. Not a lot of community events that were organized during this quarter for Constable Neufeld to attend. However, he did prepare 84 media releases, 5 wanted person reports to the public, and 2 missing person reports. We find that Wanted Wednesdays is really effective in having people turn themselves in due to a lot of pressure from family and peers. We've also, this was an important initiative for the business sector of Portage la Prairie. And so through consultation with my management team, we agreed to make city foot patrols in the downtown area, specifically on Saskatchewan and other business areas that are frequently hit, to both engage the public in positive relations, but also to deter crime from happening. Those patrols didn't just happen during the day, they happened at all hours of the day, so including the late morning hours, checking BFI dumpsters and around the nooks and crannies behind the back lanes of businesses. So I'm proud of our team for taking that on and really going with it and making it happen for the city. With regards to road safety, we, well, within the entire area, 420 traffic tickets were issued. Another priority for us is distracted driving. So in this case, because of COVID, we didn't have as many distracted driving MPI enforcement initiatives. We had 1 cell phone ticket. Impaired drivers were also down with a lot of people staying home and whatnot. So 14 criminal charges laid on impaired driving in this quarter. We didn't organize any check stops because of the reduced traffic on the streets. And so that's something we're going to keep going, engaging as the restrictions continue to either tighten or remove. And hopefully they continue to lessen. And then with regards to the city livery, this is another priority for the city, is to make sure that our livery drivers are licensed and operating in accordance with the bylaw, and as well as in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act regulations and working with city bylaw. So in the past, we have conducted joint patrols with city bylaw with the commissioners, and that's something we're going to look to continue doing. Indigenous communities, under communication, it's a priority for us. So we've been engaged actively with Dakota TP and Dakota Plains, as well as through the Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition. It was important to us, especially during COVID, to really ensure that the communication amongst our team, both from our janitorial staff right up to myself, that we're all working in the same direction to ensure safety of our officers and the wellness of our workplace. With that in mind, we had 27 different meetings, either by telecommunication or in-person meetings. And meetings such as this, we engaged in a number of various meetings with councils, 41 for the area, and with certain partners that aren't listed in the first part. And the last part of this, as far as the initiatives is concerned, it's our firm belief that if we have a healthy workplace that's safe and harassment-free and welcoming, that in turn, employees that are happy are going to do a better job out on the street and helping people and whatnot. So we're also what I'd like to call it a training detachment, a learning detachment. So it doesn't just extend to the cadets that come out from the depot, it extends to all our members, be it supervisors, constables, public servants, municipal employees. It's important to us that everybody has a chance to pursue their career goals and that get to develop in their role and understand their role. So we had 13 occasions to deal with those issues. Total calls for service in the municipality were 2334. We were closed. Obviously, as a critical service, it was important that we realign our operational priorities to make sure that we could respond to the public safety aspects of the city needs. And we did realign some of our resources in that regard. One of the biggest issues and probably feedback this council has received is the fact that our front counter has been closed. So with that in mind, it's still closed. However, we've come up with an electronic process to ensure that the public can now access and get their criminal record checks in line with their business needs in most cases, and in the nonprofit cases to help out the nonprofits with volunteers. So that, from the feedback I'm hearing, we've had that in place for a few weeks now, and it's the feedback's pretty good. So we will continue to monitor the amount of services and people, staff. We still have about 5 people that are working from home that are deemed non-critical to work in the office, just to mitigate the amount of people bringing in, from simple cold symptoms to right up to COVID. So in light of the recent spike in cases, we're still monitoring this closely to make sure that we can fulfill our commitments to this community. Are there any other questions?
I have a question, and not necessarily on your report, but at the end of July, Justice Minister Cullen made public announcements about the dollars that they've spent on these separate crime reduction teams in our province and how much they've done for rural crime numbers. And I'm just curious, how much involvement have they had in the Portage area? And then my second part of that question is, who decides where they go?
Well, so in Manitoba West District, which Central Plains and the city of Portage is my boss, where I report to the superintendent there. And the West District is in charge of the West District Crest team. So that team comprises of, I believe, 5 or 6 members. They've staffed most of it, so they're still in the staffing process in the West. However, they've got the base foundation for that team organized and set up. And essentially, it's to target organized crime and to assist detachments, dealing with organized crime in areas that they really can't manage at a local level. They're also to supplement enforcement on different projects. And so our GIS unit is fundamentally our own crime reduction unit. And so at this point in time, because they're still new, and probably for most of the time, it's going to be networking, so sharing intel and making sure that if there's common targets, that they're sharing that information so each team can be successful in their mandate. So.
Yeah, it was alarming to me when it said that they've been involved with dozens of investigations since they started in November of 2019, and I'm just curious, especially when we're such a high crime severity index, that why maybe Portage wasn't a target for them, especially when we hear from citizens of some of the things going on in our community. So
yeah, from a practical perspective, the city of Portage does have the GIS unit who are doing a great job, and those are additional provincial resources, so the city of Portage wouldn't see that specifically. Now, of other note, the city of Thompson, Thompson Rural and North District have had a CREST team for several years, and their job is to go and supplement the remote detachments and isolated detachments with projects to mitigate crime in those communities. So it's an idea that's been running effectively up in the north, and we've now started in the east and finally in the west. So the dozens that he's reporting on are mostly east. I think there's been a couple, because we do have some staff in the west, but it hasn't been fully filled. So
thanks.
there will be, I know this found human remains file that has led to some homicide charges is of note to this community and importance to this community to find out what happened. There will be another press release tomorrow that Superintendent Mike Kopang of the D Division Major Crimes Officer is going to be doing another press release tomorrow morning. So the media will be covering that extensively. Our GIS members, because this was found in our backyard, have been seconded for the last 6 weeks to supplement that investigation. It was a very, very complex homicide investigation, but we're really happy with what's coming down the pipe as far as the announcements and the results. So, so yeah, some good news coming to a tragic matter.
Thank you.
And, one question, one comment. First of all, the comment is the downtown patrols are noticed. I've had business people comment to me on them, and much appreciated, especially by the business community. Inspector, you mentioned Wanted Wednesdays. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I'm not familiar with that.
So through our division, Manitoba Media, social media, our communications office and headquarters, we're able to submit certain individuals that we've been looking for that are high profile, prolific in nature, that have outstanding warrants for arrest, and we're able to get their picture out through mainstream social media, and that usually results within a day or two of that person turning themselves in or somebody telling us where they are, and we go and pick them up. So it's very popular in Manitoba, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest that this council perhaps like the Manitoba RCMP Facebook and Twitter and Snap and whatever else we do, because all of that information is posted on those sites, and it shares a lot of stuff from traffic tips to events happening around. I know there's extensive coverage with the Gillum manhunt last year and updates that were provided through that. So, and we get so much more followers and information out to the public than we would through mainstream media or traditional media. So we're able to get our message out and not someone's interpretation of our message.
Okay. So. That was all my questions.
Thank you, Inspector St. Pierre.
I appreciate your time, Your Worship. I have a couple documents that speak to the consultation that we've just had. I'll put it to Council too before I leave. If contributing to road safety or enhancement of community safety and communicating effectively as your police service to this community, if there's any changes to that, let me know and we can have a further collaborative consultation process. And if you're satisfied that those are suitable and that we're meeting the mandate that you put forth to your police service, just a couple signatures on this document for one for the city and one for myself would be appreciated. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Councillor Knox, does that conclude your reports?
That concludes my report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. We have no old business, so council is adjourned at 7 o'clock, and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 7 p.m. First up is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Just a small change to our travel policy and vehicle policy. It is common practice for management to review the internal policies of the city to make sure that they are still relevant and recommend any changes that may need be required. So there's some minor wording adjustments and some fees. So the meal rate reimbursement from $50 to $60, and breakfast basically broken down from 11 to 15, and lunch from 14 to 20. And also, this is becoming a common thing as well. We never had this in there before, but the ability to stay with friends or family and claim $50 in lieu of hotel costs to compensate the host. So that's being added. And then just some verbiage around the mileage rate to be used annually on the CRA prescribed rate. And then the city manager, that position's being removed, as this benefit is now negotiated at the time of hire under that person's compensation package. So it's those few things that I'll be presenting to council for their consideration and approval at our next meeting. Is there any questions as it relates to those policy changes? Okay, I have nothing more to add to that, and I will bring those forth at next council.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's nothing on the agenda, but if at the pleasure of the mayor, I just have a question and a comment, if I'm able to make it at this point in time, in regards to our downtown Saskatchewan revitalization program. So the comment, first of all, I have is that I've been approached by a number of business owners that have been, and citizens alike, that are really excited and we're happy about the results of everything that it looked like. And I certainly wanted to pass those comments on, not only to council, but obviously to administration and to the work that was done with it. I just had one question as well. Some business owners that maybe are directly affected by it. I do know that, and it may be small in the whole consideration of things, but to some business owners it's important, is that we did make a mid change for the trees. And I know when we did vote on it, we voted for a certain tree that went in there. The concern is that now that they've been changed out to a different type of a tree that I guess was previously there at one point in time, it's gone now to a cherry tree. And I guess there's a couple of business owners that have reached out to myself in order to ask, first of all, why the change. And they're really concerned about the cherries falling, taking something that looks really nice, something that we spend a lot of time and a lot of money on, not only stains the sidewalks, but it really stains the inside of their businesses. So I was just going to ask that question and maybe direct it either to Councillor Espy or through the mayor or to our administration team.
Yeah, well, actually, I can answer some of those questions because I asked the same thing. The first tree was a maple, and that's what was communicated. That was a selection, and the change was made. The nursery recommended the changes. Those trees did not fare well in the ice storm in October. A lot of them broke, and so that's where the change came from. Now, I'd heard the same thing from the business community around fruit trees, so I'd asked about cherry trees, and I was assured that there wasn't much fruit with them. But that's what I know about it. Mr. Peta, would you like to comment in further detail?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Meyer, your comments are correct. It was a relatively last-minute change. I'll have to admit that we were communicating Tartanian maples to the public. However, some additional information about snow loads and the breaking of those trees, the decision was made to switch to a cherry-type tree. This cherry tree is a hybrid, and it's our understanding that the fruit droppings are quite small and shouldn't be of large effect. That being said, the trees are quite small, so we'd like to give it a try for a season here and see how they fare. If they are a major problem, we can reevaluate those trees. The theme that we're going on that side of the block face is a theme that we want to carry through the entire downtown corridor. So we really want to make sure those trees work. So we'd like to give it a try, work it through this year, and monitor it. We'll have those discussions with the business owners. If they are causing major challenges, we could reevaluate that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Other than that, I have nothing else to report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Service Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a presentation tonight from Mr. James Kostachuk on the Heritage book that's coming out. So, and a guest, maybe, that I'll let Mr. Kostachuk introduce. So,
Which one is Mr. Kostachuk? Oh, there he is. I didn't recognize him.
He's the one wearing the mask.
Yes. Good evening. I have Matthew LaCroix with me. He's the co-author of the book, so I invited him along. And I just have a short presentation. And I wanted to assure you that I'm smiling under this mask. It's weird to not have the social cues of the face, but it's with pleasure that I'm here tonight. So I want to thank you for having us here. I'm honored to be able to present the first copy to the mayor on behalf of the Heritage Advisory Committee. Without the ongoing support of council, this project would not have been possible. I would also like to thank Diane Van Aert, who has guided the Heritage Committee with kindness and home-baked cookies. The process of making a coffee table book seemed simple to me. Collect some photos and write some captions. I didn't expect it to take a couple of years. When we embarked on this sesquicentennial project, we were adamant that we would let the photographs speak for our history. We would work with what we found, so we collected as many images as possible, hundreds of them. We didn't want a book of buildings, so the book favors images of people at work and at play. We also wanted the highest quality images possible, And this was a major challenge as the images from the dawn of the 20th century are often blurry or damaged. However, I think you'll be impressed with what we found. It is also important to note that most of the images came without any information at all. Without the detective work of Les Green and Brian Barrett, many of these images would have remained a mystery. In some ways, speaking to you today is very disappointing. It isn't how I imagined the book would be shared. The book was to be part of our 2020 celebrations. However, the pandemic quickly put a stop to our plans. So I think Diane shared a photo with you. I don't know if you're able to call that up on your screen.
The smiling woman?
Yes. So it's with this idea in mind that I want to draw your attention to one photograph. It's my favorite, but it didn't make it into the final draft of the book. It was taken around 1920, yet there is something that is quite familiar about it. It shows a young woman wearing a hat. She is standing on the Island Park Bridge, not the one that was recently removed, but an earlier one. She is facing east. The large buildings you see in the background were on the grounds of the Agassiz Youth Center. In fact, the large building burned down during the Second World War. The woman in the hat has experienced a lot in recent years. The First World War has just ended. It is almost certain that she lost someone close to her. Perhaps it was a father, a brother, boyfriend, or a friend from school. In the midst of victory celebrations, the Spanish flu arrived. Public gatherings were banned, and citizens were ordered to wear masks. The woman in the hat doesn't know it yet, but 1922 and 1923 will bring back-to-back disasters. A cyclone and a flood will devastate our city. She will then face the financial hardships of the Great Depression, followed quickly by the terror of the Second World War. And yet, for all she has endured and all that she will endure, she smiles. And I think that is worth remembering and celebrating. If the woman in the hat can do it, we can too. And that is what I hope readers gain from our little book. Not only insights into our collective past, but also a feeling for our city's character. So with that, I'd like to give the mayor the first copy. And before we do that, I actually just wanted to mention one thing. Brian Barrett, I mentioned to him that I was coming here tonight. And he told me that in 1970, Ann Collier published a book, and the city promoted it. And she had council sign a select number of copies that were used for special occasions. So I brought a box, and I'll leave them for Diane. They're untouched, except the top copy. There's a divider. But I was wondering if, or my hope is that council would sign all of those copies. It might take a while, but if we could get all your signatures on it, I think they might make a nice memento for our sesquicentennial.
Wow, well, thank you very much. I have to confess that Diane had shown me before it was out there, she'd shown me a copy.
Draft, yes.
And I had it sitting on my desk, and a younger person, it wasn't Councillor Davidson, but a person about her age came in and said, "Oh, is that from when you were a kid?" So, anyway, not quite, but it's a beautiful book.
And I think just for history, we should do the COVID foot shake.
Foot shake?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Now, could I get you two to sign this for us?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
Yes.
this will be the City Hall copy.
Sure. Matthew, did you want to come on up?
A date and a signature.
Absolutely. Where are we at today? The 10th?
Mm-hmm.
August the 10th.
Hang on. Oh, yes, I guess. I should go back to the post.
Mm-hmm.
The last time you came carrying a box that had a cake in it.
Yes. Well, who knows? We might get there again. But Diane actually quite rightly reminded me that there's a list of people that we thanked in the introduction to the book. We've had tremendous support from the community. One of the people is Madison, a Fort Laurier Museum. So she's offered to loan us the use of her facility, tentatively on September 10th. Sorry, September Sunday, 13th, yes. Sunday, the 13th of September at 2 o'clock at the museum. We'll have a little community book launch because we can maintain, I think, appropriate social distancing there. If it should rain, we'll make the rain date the 20th. We're just sorting out the final details of where the books will be sold. The cost will be $25. That's a little bit below the cost of production, but of course we were able to receive both provincial and city funding to assist with the publication, so we'll be offering it at a bit of a discount to locals. And yeah, so once we get the final details, we'll share them. I'll share them with Diana. We'll get them out somehow to the media. But are there any questions?
Councillor Wall?
Did we print? Well, actually, we printed 500, but the publisher provided us with 535, so that gives us 35 copies to, that'll be some of the ones that you signed. We have certain obligations. We have to send one to the National Library, as well as the Provincial Heritage. But yeah, basically 500 copies will be available for sale.
Well, I want to thank you very much for the book, but also for the presentation this evening. I think a lot of us found it very informative and very enjoyable. And I know this is something we will treasure, and we will keep it at City Hall so we can show our visitors and share that with other people. So wish you well on the book launch, and we'll see you in September.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they'll sell like hotcakes.
I think you're right.
That so ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knox. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship, Waterworks has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. And committee is adjourned at 7:13 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.